A warning to Iran: if diplomacy doesn't work, Britain will move to a different phase.
Absolutely no justification whatever for holding them, and I hope we manage to get them to realise they have to release them.
The Gaza village turned into a sewage swamp. 5 Palestinians die after a cesspit bursts its banks. 8 months after the war in Lebanon, we meet the UN forces still on patrol. This is BBC World in Washington. I'm Catty Kay.
Hello, welcome from London. I'm Alistair Yates, and also in this programme, an affront to human dignity. Britain's Queen Elizabeth marks 200 years since the abolition of the British slave trade. A giant of its species, is this the biggest toad in the world?
The British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, has increased pressure on Iran. He's warned that the diplomatic standoff between the two countries will enter a different phase if the Iranians don't release the British sailors seized at sea last week. The BBC's diplomatic correspondent, James Robbins, reports. At least 50 people have been killed and dozens more injured in the northern Iraqi town of Tal Afar after a truck loaded with bombs exploded in a busy marketplace. Many of those killed had gathered to buy the flour the truck was meant to be carrying. Another bomb exploded earlier near the western city of Ramadi, killing at least 10 people. The violence comes as the United States Senate endorsed a target date of March next year for withdrawing American troops from Iraq. Within the past few minutes, the Senate narrowly rejected efforts to remove a date from a bill on funding the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The decision is seen as a victory for Democrats in the Senate. European Union ambassadors to the Democratic Republic of Congo say they believe the number of people killed in clashes last week between government troops and opposition activists could be as high as 500. The authorities had said about 60 people were killed in the capital, Kinshasa. And in the Middle East, staying with that story, if conditions are not difficult enough for the overcrowded population of Gaza, a flood of sewage and mud has swept through a village, killing at least 5 people. About 25 homes in Nassa were destroyed when the overburdened treatment works burst its banks, forcing thousands of residents to flee to higher ground. I'll be back with more of the day's news later on in the programme. First, let's go to Alistair in London. And Alistair, the Queen's been leading commemorations for an important anniversary, but I see that events didn't go quite as planned.
You're absolutely right, Catty. Britain's Queen and the Prime Minister led that religious ceremony to mark 200 years since the law to end the British slave trade. Well, Queen Elizabeth remembered the suffering caused, but not before a protester vented his anger at the way the event was organised. Nicholas Witchell reports.
Quite unprecedented scenes there in London today. Stay with us, still to come on the programme. We'll have a rare public appearance from Burma's reclusive general. We have a special report from inside the military state. This is BBC World. A quick reminder of the main headlines here. Stepping up political pressure on Iran, Britain warns of a new phase if Tehran refuses to free British sailors. And the Gaza village turned to a sewage swamp. 5 Palestinians die after a cesspit bursts its banks. Well, our country's economy is in ruins, its infrastructure near collapse, but the Burmese armed forces can still put on an impressive display. Thousands of troops marched in perfect step before their reclusive leader, General Tan Shwe, to mark Armed Forces Day. It was on his orders that the entire government was moved to a new capital, Naypyidaw, a year and a half ago. It's from there that our correspondent Jonathan Head has sent us this report. Hundreds died and thousands were made homeless during the Israeli-Hezbollah conflict last summer. On Wednesday, the Arab League will hold a summit where Lebanon will be high on the agenda. For the past week, our chief diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams, has been in Lebanon, seeing how the UN has been keeping the peace since the war. Yoga in post-war Lebanon, who'd have thought? Stay with us, still to come on the programme. More on the shameful truth of the slave trade. What was the dark role of Britain's Anglican Church on the Caribbean island of Barbados?
Well, we'll return now to the 200th anniversary of laws to abolish the slave trade in Britain. As we heard earlier, the Anglican Church has led the expressions of regret. But in the past, English bishops themselves owned hundreds of slaves in the Caribbean. From Barbados, Clive Myrie reports.
Well, there on our week commemorating the anniversary of 200 years of the abolition of slavery. Australia is well known for dangerous animals, and among them is the poisonous cane toad. While they start off small, they can grow to enormous sizes. As the BBC's Paul Anstis reports, a monster was caught recently in the northern city of Darwin. Well, I'm quite glad I don't find one of those in my back garden. This is BBC World News. In Washington, I'm Kathy Kay.
Thanks for being with us both once again. I'm Alistair Yates in London. Just a reminder, you can take a check at our website. It's bbcnews.com. And coming up next on BBC World Asia Today, and we'll have the latest on Chinese President Hu Jintao's visit to Russia. But before that, we'll bring you the international weather now. And here's our forecaster, Penny Tranter. BBC World Headlines, I'm Alistair Yates. A cesspit has collapsed in Gaza, flooding a village with sewage and leaving at least 5 people dead. The overburdened treatment works burst its bank, submerging several homes, forcing residents to flee, and some are still unaccounted for. Britain says efforts to secure the release of 15 sailors held by Iran will enter a different phase if they're not released immediately. The Prime Minister, Tony Blair, said there is no justification for holding them. 2 trucks loaded with bombs have exploded at markets in the northern Iraqi town of Tal Afar, killing at least 50 people and leaving many others injured. Another bomb exploded earlier near Ramadi, killing at least 10 people. Queen Elizabeth has attended a special service at Westminster Abbey in London to mark the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the slave trade. A protester was arrested when he attempted to disrupt the service. And there's more for you at bbcnews.com.